The Kansas City Chiefs win by a toe. Hey everyone, this is Spectator Sports. I'm your host Sebastian Fonseca. Remember to drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and let's break down the season opener between the Chiefs and the Ravens. Football is back. The Kansas City Chiefs win by a toe, quite literally, beating the Baltimore Ravens 27-20. And this game went down to the wire. You could see that both teams are still feeling themselves out. It's been a preseason where people get mixed and matched a little bit. It's a hard training camp, but players don't really play too much in the preseason these days. So the first 4 weeks of the NFL season is usually a time for that to be ramped up. It's going to be slow. We saw a lot of players be out of breath as they're still getting into shape, and they're still working out some kinks. So what you see now isn't going to be the final product come week 17, 18, and the playoffs. This Chiefs defense, led by coach Steve Spagnuolo, is still very legit, starting from the trenches with Carl Loftus and Chris Jones in the middle with the two linebackers, and in their secondary, led by now all-pro cornerback Trent McDuffie. It adds some physicality. You always see good coverage from the secondary as well, and they are still very legit because this side of the ball was what the Chiefs leaned on the back end of last year. And I think this year you're going to see the similar type of effect, maybe not as great as it was last year, maybe a touch below, but still, as long as they're being coached by a guy that has some really good experience, I think they're in good hands. Chris Jones was in the backfield, making Lamar have to dip and duck from his pressures. Even Carl Loftus was getting good pressure off the edge, and this was a big test for the Ravens offensive line to start the season. This might figure itself out later in the year, but Lamar's accuracy is definitely a little bit in question. I think he had a great game, but two missed throws at the final seconds was really the difference in this game. Firstly, he had Isaiah Likely on the back pylon and just simply overthrew it, hadn't given his guy a chance to really make a play on it, just sailed over him, and he's a large man too, so it's really hard to overthrow him. And then I understand there's a lot of pressure in his face with this Chiefs front line, but he did have Zay Flowers open in the back of the end zone. I think it was just happening all so fast, and it was, people will say it's a miscommunication. I think it was kind of a little bit of both, where he saw Zay, wanted to get it out, but Zay just kept running towards the back end of the end zone and just missed it again. So two really golden opportunities. And then the last one was, I think it was a good ball. Scramble drill, can't really do much. You're going for broke at this point, and you give Isaiah Likely a chance, and unfortunately his toe was just too big. It was kind of like a KD moment where he just, if he were maybe a size smaller and maybe had white cleats, it would have helped out a little bit, but he had a toe on the line, and unlike KD's shot, it did count, but it wasn't the game winner. This one nullified what would have been a potential tying touchdown, and we saw that actually the Ravens were going to go for two. Who knows what would happen there, because they wanted to end it right then and there on that very play. So it's really close. The Chiefs are always just this much ahead of the Ravens, and hopefully things change, because in this recent rivalry, or maybe just matchups, because it's been one-sided between Mahomes and Lamar, it's now going to 5-1 against Lamar's Ravens. Patrick Mahomes is, and the Chiefs always just seem to do the little things. In that AFC Championship game, it was a lot worse. There was a lot of penalties, unsportsmanlike conduct, a lot of personal fouls, and we got some of that today. There was a roughing the passer call that extended the Chiefs' drive, led to a touchdown, and then there was a lot of illegal formations, and it was really strange because some of it was on the O-line, some of it was on wide receivers in motion, and that just comes back to Todd Monken, and can he discipline this offense to execute what he wants to do, because it's going to be very interesting to see how this really unfolds going forward. I think that the Chiefs are very good. Ravens are also good, but the Chiefs have been there before. They've done it, and that's really been the difference, where they can be disciplined when the moments get tight. Their defense can get stops when they need to. The offense will rip your heart out when they need to, and it's kind of like all these superstars that come into Arrowhead, they sometimes fold playing opposite alongside Patrick Mahomes. It's not Lamar's problem, it's the Bills. We've seen it with the Bengals. Countless teams have just faltered against this Chiefs team, and it's nothing to say that these teams are bad or they choke. It's just that the Chiefs are just a little bit better. Taking a look at the Ravens offense, I think it was very predictable because when you had Derrick Henry on the field, the personnel was two tight ends, not a lot of receivers, and that meant that it was most likely a running play. And the production you got, yes, it's game one, so we can't really put too much stock into it, but he only had 43 yards or so on the ground, a touchdown early, but less than 4 yards a carry. It's going to have to be better than that. And, this team is going to go against a lot worse defensive lines compared to the Chiefs. So I think it will definitely revert back to the mean as the season progresses and the offensive line develops some more chemistry. And then on the other side, when you have Justice Hill in the lineup, it's kind of that third down pass catching back, and it's a passing play because you also have three wideouts on the field, not as many tight ends. So that's going to have to vary up some. I've seen a lot of predictability early, and if I can notice that already, who's to say that Coach Steve Spagnuolo hasn't noticed that, whether it's in tape and in the game itself. The other weird thing was that we didn't see a lot of Mark Andrews. 2 targets, 2 catches for 14 yards. And is Isaiah Likely now the tight end one? Because he had a monster game, and that might be just subject to the matchups across of him. What I saw from Mark Andrews, and yet again, it's week 1, so let's have a larger sample size, but he did look a little slow, not explosive. He's had the full offseason to recover from that lower leg injury he sustained last year. He definitely didn't look like himself in the championship game. And now we have to see, is this the decline of Mark Andrews' career? Because sometimes players just cannot recover from those type of injuries. But Isaiah Likely now has an opportunity, and he sees that he had 9 catches for over 100 yards, was probably the best Ravens pass catcher on the field, and very nearly came down with an amazing touchdown grab. It would have been his second of the day. I think that what we've seen bits and pieces of Isaiah Likely in his first couple of years in this league, but if this is the way it's going to trend, you have to go with the hot hand and just trust that Isaiah Likely can handle the larger workload, and can he navigate the added attention, because I think now the tape is out. Maybe in week 2, the Raiders, who's their week 2 opponent, take a harder look and they just say, we're going to take Isaiah Likely out. And then is that going to open up things for Zay Flowers? Because Zay didn't have the strongest of games either. He was a very gadgety type of player. He was getting some carries, he was getting some trick plays, and not a lot of receiving yards at the end of the day. So that's also something that's going to have to progress, but it's a slow working progress. There's a lot of moving parts in this Ravens team. On the other side with the Chiefs offense, this looked like what the Chiefs looked like before last year. Last year, it was just very difficult to see them play offense. They struggled to move the ball down the field. They didn't have explosive plays. They only had 4 touchdowns of 20 yards or more. And Xavier Worthy, in his 2 touches, scored touchdowns from 20 yards plus out. Instantly, we know Andy Reid is going to make the best of those opportunities, best for his guys, and put them in situations to succeed. He didn't even have Xavier Worthy running a route. It was a simple motion and then a pitch, and he's just going to loop behind a whole caravan of blockers and navigate through. He basically went untouched. You look at the other touchdowns of busted coverage. Marlon Humphrey missed on thinking that there's safety help over the top, so he just dropped off Xavier Worthy when there was nobody around. It was a wide open touchdown. Yet again, that's coming back to the Ravens not doing the little things right, and they have a new DC as well, so it's going to be a long adjustment to that. But the Chiefs already look really, really good, and seeing Rishi Rice, surprised he's even playing. He wasn't suspended for this game, and maybe he won't be suspended for the off-field incident in the offseason. Just talking about his play on the field, he was great. I thought his ability to open things up from the slot and be that other middle receiver is going to be great for the Chiefs, because now with Kelsey, he usually patrols the middle. He has a lot of choice option or a stick route, something short intermediate, and that's he gets most of the attention. That's just a fact. But now with Rishi Rice and his development, he had over 100 yards, a 35-yard catch and run type of play. It's going to open things up because then you have to pay attention to those guys. The safety is going to come down a little bit more. And then once Hollywood Brown comes back and you have Xavier Worthy, I mean, that's just going to burn you over the top. So it's not quite Tyreek, Kelsey, Chiefs, but it is maybe a little bit more of a premium compared to 2022, where they were figuring out the post Tyreek world and they had a lot of ragtag group of guys together, and it looked worse in 2023. But I think it's definitely the best version post Tyreek Hill that we're going to see in this matchup.